What's good, guys? This is Unjolly Ranchers, diving into the shadows of life's untamed tales. Today, we're going to be talking about the time my principal confiscated my bike for riding it to school and how I got away with continuing to ride it to school. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but let's just get into it. Now, this story takes place back in 7th grade. Back then, I really looked at school as just a joke and complete waste of my time. I just felt like the things they were teaching me in school were completely useless, and I wanted to learn about topics that would actually help me go far in life. Now, because of my point of view, I didn't really fit in and tended to just treat school like a joke, so I'd act out and get into a lot of trouble. Now, please don't do what I did. School definitely is a good place for some people, it just wasn't a good fit for myself personally. I don't remember what I specifically did this time, but I ended up getting morning detention one day and I had to be at the school at 7 a.m. instead of 8 that next day. Now, because I lived in such a small town, the elementary, middle, and high school were all crammed into one building with the cafeteria separating the three. I'd usually walk down the road every morning and catch the bus, but because I had to be there an hour early, I either had to get a ride from my parents or walk. Now, my parents weren't notified that I got detention. School would usually only call them if I were to get suspended, and I really didn't feel like asking my mom for a ride to have her find out I got in trouble once again and risk getting grounded. Now, that morning I ended up waking up with only 20 minutes to get to school, so I got up, threw my clothes on, brushed my teeth, and rode my bike to school, which was about a mile away. Now, when I got to school, I noticed there wasn't a bike rack anywhere in sight, so I just left my bike in the parking lot up against the light pole, thinking nothing of it and headed inside. When I got into my principal's office, he gave me a really dirty look and said, "You know you're not allowed to ride your bike to school, right?" Now, I was shocked. Like, dude, why not? He then explained to me that someone might steal it and the school didn't want to have to deal with that drama. So I told him that it was the only way I was going to show up to the detention that morning. He started getting very aggressive, raising his voice with me, and said I'm getting detention after the weekend next Monday and told me not to write it again or I'd get in-school suspension. Now, I was furious. Nowhere in the handbook did it say that students couldn't bring their bikes to school. It actually said we could bring a pocket knife with us as long as the blade was under 2.5 inches, because somehow that wasn't considered a weapon, and I definitely took advantage of that being the little rascal I was. We argued for like 10 minutes back and forth about how I thought it was ridiculous students couldn't ride their bikes to school. He told me the high schoolers were the only ones allowed to drive to school if they had a legal vehicle and their license. I ended up dropping it because I was tired of listening to his BS. Now, during detention, he ended up stepping out of his office to deal with some business and told me to behave and continue working on my homework. Now, at this time, I had just got my first cell phone. It was really cheap and wasn't activated, but I could use YouTube and the internet as long as I was connected to Wi-Fi. Anyways, I started thinking, so as long as you have a legal motorized vehicle, you can drive to school. So I went on the internet and looked up small engines for bicycles. I ended up finding a complete kit to turn your mountain bike into a little 49cc motorcycle. It was a single gear and clutch driven. Knowing I didn't need a driver's license for anything under 50 cc's, I busted out my $100 Visa card I was saving for something else, and I bought the kit. Back then, it came out to $86 before shipping, so I paid for the 2-day shipping, hoping it would get to my house before I had detention on Monday. Sadly, it didn't, so I ended up telling my mom the story, and she thought it was stupid as well that I got in trouble for riding my bike to school, so she gave me a ride that morning. My control freak of a principal made a stupid remark like, "Ah, I see you learned your lesson." I got through the day, and when I got home, my engine kit was there, so I got right to work. I've always been very creative, so it only took me a few hours to finish installing the kit. I rode down to the gas station, filled up the motor, and it started right away. The people watching me thought it was super cool. Now, come the next day, I rode my motorized bike to school. Parked it where I did the first time, right in view of Principal Control Freak's window out in the parking lot. Now, come the end of the day, I went outside to ride home thinking my principal realized that's a battle he lost. Nope. I get out there and my bike is gone. So I go inside and ask my principal if he knew anything, to which he responds, "Yeah, I already told you. You aren't allowed to ride that bike to school and I'm giving you 2 days of ISS. I was furious, yelling at him saying, "That's my damn property, give it back now. You're seriously worried about it getting stolen, but you're the one to steal it? You're mental." I ended up missing the bus that day and had to walk home. I couldn't find my bike anywhere before I left. He told me that he'll be calling the school cop to come over and have a chat with me the next morning. Fast forward to the next day, I was furious. As I walked up to the school entrance, I saw a cop standing next to my bike. He says, "We need to have a chat about your behavior," and asked why I've been acting out. So I told him the entire story. Now, this is the best part. I explained to him it was only 49 cc's, so he understood I didn't need a license to drive it. He told me he was on my side and we're going to have a talk with Mr. Control Freak. We get into the office and the cop gets on his ass, asking him why he's being so ridiculous about the situation, saying I did nothing wrong and he shouldn't waste an officer's time with such petty drama. My principal was furious, giving the officer and mainly myself furious dirty looks. My principal told the cop it's against school policy for students to ride bikes to school and putting an engine on it doesn't change anything, saying students may only drive legal vehicles to school like motorcycles and cars. After hearing this, the cop stepped in and he told Mr. Control Freak, "Look, I understand where you're coming from, but that is no longer a bike. It is a motorized vehicle that he is legally allowed to drive without a license due to it being under 49 cc's. The cop told him that I'm allowed to ride my bike to school again, and if he hears that he confiscates my bike again without a good reason, that I'll be able to press charges for theft." Now, your boy had the biggest smirk on his face, being a little cocky shit, knowing there's nothing my principal could do at this point. The cop told him that I shouldn't have in-school suspension and that he needs to back off and let this creative out-of-the-box thinker continue to learn with the other students and how he owed me an apology. My principal then gave me the fakest excuse for an apology I have ever heard in my whole life and told me to get back to class. The officer followed behind me, so I turned to him, thanking him for everything he did. He told me it was no problem, and he admired how I found a way around the system and that the bike was super cool, but how I need to wear a helmet for it to technically be legal. I thanked him once again, then went to class. That day, when I was heading out on my bike, I noticed my principal watching me through his window. So I stopped, revved my tiny little weed whacker sounding engine, smiled, and drove off, feeling like a badass, super proud of myself. From that point on, I stopped taking the bus and rode my bike every day to school. And that, my friends, is the story of how I found a way around the system to ride my bike to school. Luckily, Mr. Control Freak is no longer the principal. My favorite teacher who taught social studies is now in charge and allows the kids to ride their bikes to school because he's a damn G. I hope you all enjoyed the story. It's definitely one of my favorites. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more crazy life stories. Stay tuned for more on Jolly Tales. Until next time, peace.